Good morning to you. Mark Stott of HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion. It is now Friday, September the 25th, 2020. Today we're going to take a look at what's happening out there right now, which thankfully there's not much happening, which is we definitely need the break. And that's going to be the case throughout the next several days. Very nice weekend ahead. People still cleaning up after several hurricanes, Isaias and Laura, and most recently, of course, Hurricane Sally. And then Tropical Storm Beta over in Texas. Some cleanup over there from that. So let's get right on and look at it. I can't even talk today. Let's get on with it and look at what's going on. Only the remnants there of Beta over northern Alabama on the map today from the National Hurricane Center, at least in the Atlantic Basin. In the Pacific, I'll show you this real quick. We do have Tropical Storm Lowell, which is not going to amount to anything. It'll die away over the cooler waters of the Pacific, and that is that. If we look at this on the satellite imagery here, the animation from Tropical Tidbits, you can see that we have much less in the way of convection across the Atlantic, and we have a lot of strong upper level winds. You can just look at the satellite and figure that out. Strong upper level winds here, coming out of the Gulf. It's just not a favorable time right now. We are in the suppressed phase of the Madden-Julian oscillation, and even though water temperatures are quite warm across a good deal of the Atlantic, the Gulf and the Caribbean, warm water alone does not create tropical cyclones. You have to have a pre-existing weather feature, and we do have some of those out there, but you have to have upper level winds that support the development of thunderstorms that can grow vertically. And the easiest way to understand this is that tropical cyclones need everything to be moving in the same direction. You can't have the low level and the mid-level center of a cyclone moving this way while the upper level winds are moving that way, where they go against each other. That doesn't work. You don't allow for vertical development and the efficient transfer of energy and the engine of the system to function properly. And this is just one of those time periods where the Atlantic Basin is not favorable. You get these ups and downs. It's very common during even the very busy hurricane seasons that we've seen in the past. In 2005, we had ups and downs even after Hurricane Rita, which is right around this time 15 years ago. There was another lull to some extent, and then of course at the end of October, practically a month later, we had very powerful Hurricane Wilma. And it's not going to surprise me at all that we see something very powerful develop in the Caribbean over here sometime before it's all said and done, especially in the month of October. But the week ahead, the weekend first, but then the next 7 days, I think should be fairly quiet, which is obviously great for everybody. We need the break. Looking at the vorticity signatures, there's the energy left over right there from Beta. Not much moisture with it, so not a big heavy rain threat. The pressure field and the wind and everything associated with it is really elongating and being stretched out, and that'll be the end of that for Beta. Then down in the Atlantic, just a little bit of energy out here in the deep tropics, piece of energy up here north and east of the islands, but none of these areas are being picked up on to any great extent by the computer models, the guidance. Whether you look at the deterministic and use that, or you look at the Ensemble Guidance, which is like looking at a whole bunch of different model runs to give you different outcomes, kind of like a consensus. A lot of ways to look at that. And if we look at the operational at the next several days, and here's your little bit of a lesson in sort of understanding what the weather maps and the guidance can show us. The operational runs, your deterministic runs, are kind of like your best version of those models. The European, the GFS, the Canadian, there's lots of them. We're going to look at the GFS here. This is the 6Z run from this morning, and this is the 850 millibar level of the atmosphere. And we're going to run it out all the way to 2 weeks because I want to show you some interesting things and how we can kind of look at signals and make some use of that. All right? So let's get rid of me and kind of paint on here what's what and where's where. So this is the outline of a decent area of high pressure, the Bermuda High, if you will. and these different height lines in the atmosphere represent, the sort of the thickness of that high, how deep it is in the atmosphere. And then you have this area up here, which is the leftovers of beta, deep easterly flow. That's what these wind flags, these barbs show here, coming in. And then that turns the corner and you get southwest flow at 5,000 feet over Florida. And then these little orange and yellow areas, these are areas of vorticity, energy in the atmosphere or spin. And then you should hopefully know your geography. Here's the east coast of the U.S. There's Florida, so forth and so on. There's the Yucatan, and finally the north coast of South America. Here are the leeward and windwards, and there's Barbados, and there's Bermuda. All right, so now that you're all oriented as to what we're looking at, let's just kind of look at this out over time. And you notice if I just kind of go through the right arrow key, you see a big weather feature move through the nation's midsection. We back it up. See that? This is this cold front that's coming right here, this trough that's digging in, and that vorticity is all linear. It's very stretched out. A lot of energy there, but it's not focused. But it does represent energy and storminess. It's just not bundling down in the tropics. So that swings through. We're now out at day 5. We go out here to day 6. And you notice in the southeastern Pacific, some energy tries to get more focused over here. The trades are coming in, and then they kind of take a bump right there, a little bit of turning as the trades try to slow down a little bit. The air starts to pile up and converge. That's something interesting to watch. So that's day 6. Let's go on to day 7, and then finally out to day 8 and beyond. And you see what happens. We start to really, in the operational here, pile up the air down here and start sort of this turning process. Ridging now dominating over the deep south. We're going to have a nice warm-up as we get into October. This cold spell that's coming is going to be very brief, and at least according to the guidance, doesn't mean it has to be. But let's keep on going. We're now out at day 10. Let's go on past that through finally day 16 here. There's 300 hours out. This is October the 7th. And you see different pieces of energy come and go. Tropical cyclone there. We back it up a little bit in the Pacific at hour 372. Finally out at hour 384. 2 weeks out on the operational. I have another trough that's come off. Energy coming down into the Caribbean. Not much signal of anything developing. Certainly in the Pacific there is. And so you look at this and you go, okay. For the next 2 weeks, according to the GFS, operational, no hurricanes develop in this part of the Atlantic Basin. That's generally what this would show. And so, you could talk to your friends about that at the water cooler around the office. For those of you that are in the office, you can post it on social media. You can talk about it like I am on an update here. That for the next 384 hours, there's no clear signal in the operational GFS of any hurricane activity. Okay, sounds good. Well, what about the ensemble guidance? All right, well, let's take a look at that. Oh, different story. What is the ensemble guidance? Well, this is the GEFS. The GFS is the Ensemble Forecast System, I believe is what it stands for. And so, again, the way to understand this is instead of just looking at one run, you look at a bunch of different runs, and I think it's around 19 to 20 members. I believe it is. I know the European, the EPS, the Ensemble Prediction System, has 51 members, the operational plus 50 ensemble members. And so it's like asking a whole bunch of people a question, and you get hopefully a similar answer. What's the consensus? Like a survey or a poll or something. So this is kind of like polling the model and changing a few different variables, and you get different outcomes. It's very complicated, but the net result is that you can see a pattern emerge, that all of these blobs you see in here are different perturbations of the GFS that end up showing a signal here of a lowering pressure field from a lot of the members, relatively speaking, that towards in October there, after about day 8, the pattern should start to favor a lowering of pressures in the Caribbean. So you don't really get that from the deterministic run, but the ensemble run here paints that picture. The color gradient here, you can see the anomalies here. These are lower pressures, and the lows are red, the highs are blue. That's the way Levi has got the scale here. So that's what we're seeing in the ensemble package from the 6Z run of the GFS. It showed it on the 0Z run as well. So it's a signal. It's not a forecast necessarily. It's kind of like a wave your hand, hey, look out in the future here as we get into October. And then you start putting your knowledge to use. Well, what happens in early to mid-October? Naturally, this area becomes favorable. That's what's supposed to happen. We've seen that in the past. That makes sense. What else is probably going to happen? We can look at other guidance. I don't want to do this all day, but we know that a more favorable Madden-Julian oscillation, or maybe what's called a convectively coupled Kelvin wave, just fancy ways of saying, at this time period, we're also seeing a more favorable pattern setting up on the large scale. And there are active tropical waves that will be moving off of Africa to maybe seed this area. The water temperatures are plenty warm. Bottom line is the evidence is mounting that we at least want to pay attention to this area once we get into early October. And it doesn't take a genius to figure this out. We know this. We know October can be very busy. And it has been very busy since at least 2014. And I talked about this yesterday. We had Gonzalo, and I know that was in the Atlantic, but it came out of the Caribbean. 2015 gave us Joaquin. It started in the Southwest Atlantic. 2016, we had Matthew. Need I say more? 2017, we had Nate, which was impactful enough as a Category 1 landfall. 2018, Category 5 Michael originated from this same area. Last year was kind of an off year. We only had, we had Nestor, Nestor. Not much of a big deal, thank goodness. Kind of bucked the trend a little bit, which was fine considering that we had Dorian at the end of August into September last year. We don't need Category 5s, but I'm just saying we didn't need another one last year, that's for sure. So this is showing some interesting things, and we can look at it from the ensemble prediction, the EPS. And this is a different way of visualizing it, that there's a clustering and you get a probability here. And this is from weathermodels.com, that in the hours way out from 216 to 264, going on into early October, the guidance is starting to hone in on this area that's climatologically favored. And there's just a little bit of a color in there that's indicating right about here, about 60% probability of a tropical depression forming. This is way out in time, but it's a signal. You understand? This is like you go to the doctor and they say, well, your blood pressure is getting a little high. You're putting on a little bit of weight. It's not time to go get open heart surgery yet, but you need to pay attention to these things. And you know how that worked out for me. If you watch the first episode or two of the Hurricane Highway, you see what that's all about. We ignore our health warnings sometimes. I know I did for many years, and look what happens. But, in this situation, the analogy is when you look at this signal in the tropics, you just should pay attention. That's all. You don't freak out. You don't have the doctor tell you your blood pressure is going up a little bit, and you go start writing on your Facebook wall that your life is over. It doesn't work that way from point A to point B. But if you ignore it, like I did for many years, you could end up almost dying. And in this situation, if you just look at the deterministic and say, oh, there's nothing in the tropics, nothing's going to happen, season's over, and you try to downplay it, it just doesn't work that way either. Just like looking at this, you cannot conclude that there's going to be hurricanes in October. It's a signal that we need to start paying attention to. That's all it is. All right? All right, so there's that. Now, this is freaking cool. I want to show you what we have accomplished through our project, the Hurricane Landfall Project, part of HurricaneTrack.com, for 16 years now. This is what the crowdfunding covers. This is what we do. So we remember Hurricane Sally, right? Of course. A lot of heavy rain, and a lot of the rivers in Florida and Alabama, down in the coastal area, of course, went into flood stage, and some of them set records. One of those rivers was the Fish River near Silver Hill. Now, Weather Service and the USGS have these gauges, and they measure stuff. They measure the rain, they measure the water level, and they put forecasts out. And we get these forecasts. And through our group of very smart people, through our crowdfunding support, people were paying attention. Initially, I heard from Steve Sarinko, we call him Delaware Steve, and then Tim Bruno and others. They were paying attention and made sure that I was aware, and my team and I, Greg, myself, and Mike Farrow, and Brant, which was Greg's friend, also a meteorologist, the team, okay? We were made aware of this, and we're trying to focus on the coast. You know, we want to see the storm surge. What's Sally going to do? Well, we know that they have major impacts when it comes to freshwater flooding. So this forecast was coming out, and this is just a screen grab here from this slide from National Weather Service, Mobile, Pensacola. As time went on, Sally made landfall, and the water came up very quickly here. And this is where it was. This is the forecast going forward at the time that this graphic was put out. But this is what happened. Sally made it to 20.7 feet with the flooding. Sally's rainfall at the Fish River gauge. It made it to 20.7, almost to the record, a little bit short of 23.1. And so we got wind of this early on, and Mike Farrow and I went to this area right here called Bohemian Park in the Fairhope area, Silver Hill area in Alabama. Zoom out a little bit so you know where this is in context. I love Google Maps. I love maps as a whole. They tell a story. So this gets you an idea of where this is, okay? So Sally is going to make landfall, as we know, down here at Gulf Shores with the center, and bad storm surge over here on the east side of it, Orange Beach, and all the way over to Pensacola, etc. And a lot of attention was paid to that, and rightfully so. Wind damage was terrible. Power outages, definitely all big impacts. Major impacts from a Category 2 hurricane. But we also knew that the river flooding was coming. Not only the Fish River, but also the Styx River, the Perdido River, and many others. So, like I said, we put our thinking caps on and our team worked together, and we went out here to Bohemian Park, and we drove and checked it out. Mike and I set up a camera 9.5 feet up off the ground at the parking lot area. It's like a fishing hole, and it's a GoPro that's inside of this box right here. This is a Pelican case, and this is the exact same setup. It's not the same box physically, but it's the same setup to the T, using a GoPro right there, GoPro Hero 4. We've specially modified it so that it'll run for days. Normally they don't do that, and we have a way to make it run for a long time. Recording video, not just pictures. This is what we did in Hurricane Michael, if you remember that. That's exactly the same setup that we captured that amazing footage from Michael. So we set it up, and it was slated to run for 36 hours, recording in 720, the 720 setting, which would get us 30 frames per second, full motion video with audio. And let me show you what we got. I'm very proud of this. It's really remarkable. Let me get rid of me, and let's just play it. This is when we set it up, Tuesday afternoon. That's the view. Now watch what happens. Nightfall comes, and then the next day, the water has already come up. This is the highway right there. There's the bridge. So the rainfall lets up. You know, Sally moves on, and the rainfall lets up, but the river continues to rise very rapidly. way out of its banks, past flood stage. And then look what happens. Truly, truly remarkable. I've always wanted to capture something like this, to be able to show you what it looks like if you're caught in a flood. You know, this is what could happen to your home. This is what could happen to your vehicle if you're, don't use common sense, etc. The box went several feet underwater. Look at that. The top of you can see the water right up here. That's the surface. The box is now completely submerged. There's sediment and leaves and fish, all kinds of things. And the water is now above the box and continuing to rise. And then it turns blood red because of the clay sediment. Now the water is several feet above the camera. Absolutely incredible. And a real educational tool that we have here. This will be useful for the Southeast River Forecast Center, National Weather Service offices, education, you name it. We'll be studying this for a while. There's a lot of data that we can pull out of this. Very happy about the success of this. And the box, we went back to pick it up yesterday, and the box was down on the ground here. I think the utility company came by and cut the strap here. It's got a chain on there, nice thick chain, and just left it all on the ground. I guess they had to get on the pole or something. Didn't seem that there was any damage in the area except to trees, but nevertheless, the strap was cut. The box was on the ground yesterday when we picked it up. And like I said, not a drop of water, not one single molecule of H2O, none. Actually, it'd be many molecules, wouldn't it? 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. There was none, no parts of anything. That box is 9.5 feet. When we mounted it, that's 9.5 feet above the ground. We feel like the water level probably got up to here, maybe here, something like that, and submerged that box for about 8 to 10 hours. And not a drop of water. Incredible. That's a Pelican box, GoPro. I mean, it worked. And just great team effort, and really nice to have the project work out. And it's all funded right here through Patreon. I talk about it, when something's coming to make you aware of it. But I want to talk about it real quick here. This is what we do. And if you want to become a part of it, that's how you do it. Patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. Select the membership level and become part of what we're doing. Truly active, crowd-based, crowd-funded science, education, innovation. Thanks to you guys, that's how we do it. I bought that GoPro off of eBay. We have a bunch of these. Through crowdfunding. The case, the battery that powered it, all of it, thanks to you guys. So big round of applause for everybody. I might be the guy that's got the ideas, but thanks to you, we're able to do it. All right? And thanks for listening and watching this long video. I appreciate it. We covered a lot. So everybody up to speed on what's happening? Nothing going on in the next few days. Got to watch when we get into October, and we'll see if these signals get stronger. All right? We'll talk about it some more tomorrow. All right, I'm going to go finish picking up the rest of the equipment. We still need to get down to Dauphin Island and over to Perdido River. We had 2 live cameras there, and those cut off once the water level reached them, unfortunately. But we still need to go pick them up and see what happened over there. And finally head home to North Carolina, where Mike and I live, this weekend. So there you go. Have a great rest of your Friday. I was just thinking if there's anything else I needed to add. And there's not. So I will sign off. Have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend ahead. I'll post an update again on Monday. Going to take a couple of days off from all of that. I will post stuff on Patreon, of course. But we'll have another video update on Monday. I am Mark Sudduth. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.